Interview Ninja Step 41. Adapting your words and style to match the other person's so you can build on the we are alike aspect of rapport. Analogies. Choosing them, matching another person's if they start using one, and then the limitations of just how much you can get out of a given analogy and when it may be necessary to switch over to a different one or just start talking without analogies. Then we move on to personal power. This is a very important subject. You're currently limited in a number of ways, but there is a lot you can do to build your personal power, and we talk about a few of those areas.
Changes, because I've already covered with you, I would say taught you, I've already covered with you words and accurate selection of words, being more precise about the words you'd use. And I've hinted to you about NLP and so on. Now it's entirely up to you whether you go off and read about NLP and study it. There's all, if you look back through those videos, you'll see loads and loads and loads of little
have a go cards.
When Corben says have a go cards, I like the analogy and adopt it immediately. A soft skill that is easy to learn is using the other person's language style and words. His subconscious picked up on my gestures and perceived them as dealing cards. Adapting your language, words and tone comes naturally to most people. It is part of basic survival behaviour. The soft skill that you can develop is to build on that basic natural capability by having an increased awareness of the other person's preferred words and adjusting your choice of words and analogies to match.
I like it. Yeah, you could do this. I put cards in your hand. Which they're life cards. You don't play them with you. They're cards you can play out there in the world of life. And I've talked to you about personal power. And at your stage of life, a lot of personal power is about your skills and your knowledge.
I'm going to seed a few more aspects of personal power and how to become more powerful. It's a bit early because personal power and the purpose you need it for are strongly linked. I need to do a lot more to help Corben identify his choice of purpose and build a personal plan before I can go into detail about building specific types of personal power, but I can introduce the general concepts at this stage. Separating personal power into different categories was first evolved by Aristotle. But since then, all sorts of people have jumped on the bandwagon and cut it up into different categories for different situations. In my coaching for senior managers, I actually use 11 different types of personal power. And that's because to run big organizations, you do need to pull pretty well every lever you can find.
Because you haven't got a track record of experience to build on. You haven't yet got many contacts. You haven't got any official power that some organization has given to you. You have very little power of punishment, very little power of reward. So these are sources of power which aren't yet available to you. But you can skill yourself up. You can be good at interpersonal dynamics. And you can know stuff. So at this stage, you need to be building your knowledge and your skills. And maybe, in your own particular situation, you do need to be writing music and getting it out there. But it's got to be the right kind of music that builds towards
where I want to be.
Yes.
That was a bit of a lecture on different types of personal power. So I need to switch my position and my styles and go into a different type of interpersonal dynamic to re-engage Corben so that we can have a more equal conversation.
I often come back to Alexander the Great. I think Aristotle I need to be sure of this, but I think Aristotle was his teacher. He did what I'm doing for Alexander the Great.
Did he?
I think it was Aristotle. We can look that up. Vagueness.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Who was it? Who was the mentor for Alexander the Great? We don't know. Maybe it was Aristotle. You can correct me.
Hold on.
Maybe it's an error. Couple of seeds. There you go.
Because vagueness, it's a combination of the two, and it might just be the one. It's either vagueness, where you don't actually know who it is, but you reckon that it's Aristotle. But you're giving me that vague. I'm obviously not going to know who that is
yet.
So, no, I know yet, but often the real use of being probably wrong, from what I've understood, is so that someone can in their head go, I know the answer to that, and take a step up on the power level. But if I'm not going to know that you're probably wrong, and this is a teacher-student relationship in this sense, because I don't know if Aristotle was the teacher for Alexander the Great. It might well have been Titius or whatever it's called. Yeah. I don't know. You can't do a probably wrong where the person you're doing it to doesn't know that you're probably wrong.
Well, here's another point. It doesn't matter, because which one I'm using, or whether I'm using a combination of them, or whether I'm not using any of them at all and I'm using a different one, doesn't matter. What matters is the purpose. And the purpose and the seed I'm trying to sow there is somebody was the mentor for Alexander the Great. Okay, a guy was hired by.
I did what we were doing.
Yes.
Yes.
A guy was hired by his dad, whose name was Philip, I think. It might not have been Philip. Okay.
Yeah.
And his dad,
yeah,
who was king of a place.
Yeah. Yeah.
It might have been called Athens.
Yeah.
But it wasn't.
Yeah.
Okay. He was king of an area in the north of Greece. I'll tell you that this is a giveaway, called Macedonia. Okay. And this is turning into a history lesson. I don't know.
This isn't a history lesson, because you're lacing what you're saying with the things that we were just talking about.
Okay.
So it's more an example than a history lesson.
Okay. All right. Well, as an example, this guy's king of a part of Greece. At the time that he did what he did, all the other places, Greece wasn't run as a country. It was a bunch of what's called city-states. And each city fought with the other city most of the time. And a lot of their energy went into fighting with each other. And so when Philip got his act together as a very, very good leader, and he had this clever son, what he did was he just pretty much marched through the rest of Greece and brought them all to heel, because they were all fighting with each other. All right, so there he is. He's now boss of Greece. And he looked around for the best person to teach his son. And he found someone in Athens who was leader of the school in Athens.
It might have been Aristotle.
And it might have been Aristotle. And he sent some people down who they made him an offer he couldn't refuse. Said, hey, why don't you come up? Why don't you come up and teach my son? So ditch everything you're doing here, come up, teach the kid. Okay? And use the techniques that you've been using to teach these other people to teach my kid. My kid will be your student, your only student. And that was what happened. That was the relationship. So Alexander the Great had the most brilliant teacher pretty much who's ever lived. Yeah. Anyway, so
vagueness, probably wrong.
Yeah, exaggerate.
No.
Okay.
Because we haven't done
Next
that one yet.
Right.
The one that we just did, questionable opinion.
Yes.
Have we done?
Although, well,
No.
we have and we haven't. That's kind of it's doing something that's questionable.
Yeah.
But questionable opinion, an opinion implies values.
If Corben is going to start questioning everything, he's going to need the soft skills to evaluate what people tell him. He needs a new method of thinking, which is called critical analytical thinking, or CAT. Critical analytical thinking can be thought of as growing up and moving on from childhood judgments. The challenge is your education until now has not given you any framework or method to use. It used to be given to people, but no longer in this age of science, really. We can start by seeing the difference between facts, opinions, statements, and propositions. It looks academic, but it is essential for you as an adult to dig down into your own subconscious and realize how much your opinions were formed by others and the forces trying to make you conform to a specific set of social values. But they may not be your values, and really they could be highly questionable at any given time, especially if there's things like war going on, when the central government bangs out all sorts of propaganda that you're supposed to just engorge. And in fact, it takes a lot of resolution for young people to realize that what they're being told is wrong, and they need to mobilize to make society, their society that they're going to live in, better.
A person's values.
What you believe.
Yeah. So if I were to say to you, I think we should bring back what's called subscription. I think all young people should have to do 2 years in the army.
Yeah.
Okay? That's what made this country great. And until...
The correct word is conscription, which is when the government of a country forces individuals to give up their personal liberty and do something it has decided is in the national interest. It's nearly always young people that get conscripted.
They stopped prescription when I was 19. So I was born in 41. And at this stage, I'm tempted to make an error in my calculation, all right? Because I know it's something you could correct me on. So I was born in...
And that's what's important, right? I've got to have the ability to correct you.
Yes, otherwise...
It's probably wrong, it's just you being wrong.
Yeah, I need to pitch where I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Deliberately where I know you can be right.
No, I agree. So that's when we were talking about the Aristotle thing.
If I was playing this out... Yeah, but the point of the Aristotle thing was to sow a seed. You'll research it. Hopefully you'll be interested enough. You'll research it. And then when somebody else says, what have you been doing with Graham? You'll actually be able to say, well, it's a bit like ancient Greece, when King Philip of Spain hired, this guy to teach his son. I said, that's what Graham's trying to do with me. He's trying to replicate that kind of experience and help me grow in that way. Not to go and conquer a load of countries with, rape and pillage, but
to conquer
the music world.
My life. Yes.
Yeah. Your life.
Yeah.
So the takeaway will be, it's a seed, but it ain't for you and I. I'm not sowing these seeds for you to grow with you and I. I'm sowing these seeds for you to grow in your life.
The learning process is become aware, analyze, using critical analytical thinking, understand, and then decide how you are going to develop your intelligences to take advantage of what you now are aware of and have a degree of understanding. In step 42, we're going to talk about how becoming aware of something and understanding it is important in terms of what are your beliefs and what are your own opinions. Maybe now you're revisiting your awareness of the world. You may want to think again about what your beliefs are and what your opinions are, And we give some examples of some pretty questionable opinions that are held widely in a number of societies, and you may or may not agree with them, but at least revisit them as an adult.